Backwards.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
I had to finish off that other stuff.
Okay.
Before the dairy farm.
Okay.
You think it's working
Yep.
again?
Working
Yeah.
in the bank again.
Okay,
Remember before we got
I'm
here.
in the bank there before we were married, and anyhow, these gals invited us over for supper, and I said to Bob, let's go. I mean, in those days, stuff was open and above board. So we pedal upstairs to the upstairs room, and let me tell you, in work, they were class. They knew how to dress and everything. And I came upstairs to the top step and stopped and looked around in the room, and I thought, how in the world can these girls come out of that looking the way they do in the bank? It was a pig pen up there. Oh, God. And I couldn't imagine it, but they didn't, no big deal. So, anyhow, enough of that story.
Yeah. That didn't last long.
We had a good time.
Yeah, what'd you have for supper?
Who knows?
Remember?
Who knows? I don't
He was
remember.
too worried about it being messy.
And I found one of them a couple years ago. I did a lot of fun finding people that are just 50 years back,
Yeah.
60 years back. And yeah, gave a call, went to the county courthouse, marriage records, last known place, and married name, ding, dong, nothing to it. That was before all the stuff you guys have now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then I had a good friend from high school. I was working in the bank then, and he got a job in Hull, machine shop, building elevators and stuff, welding steel, all like that. And then he had an accident. He had cleaned a whole bunch of metal, and you wouldn't know what I mean, Scott. Cleaned a whole bunch of metal, got a lot of the fluid spilled on his pants. Then the metal was ready to go, and he started welding, and then he'd flare up like that. And they rolled him on the floor, everything right, and the fire department was there right, but they took his pants off, you know, and the skin came with it. And he was burned bad, really bad. And so he laid in that little hospital, little country hospital in Hull, Iowa, for weeks. And I would come home, I knew that he was there. I would come home from Laverne, stop by Mom and Dad in Rock Rapids on the farm there, and then he had just bought a new car, I think. Yeah, a new little Ford, I think. And he let me use it. I didn't have a separate car. I put about $300 in this thing, and it was nice. Run on down to Hull, and then visit Hank Kears in the hospital there. And then in those days, you know, little country hospital, you got good care, but hey, it was tough not getting your burns repaired and stuff like that. He laid there week after week, and I'd come there, and he'd have a little box of chocolates there on the bench, and a couple of magazines, you know, maybe something about cars or something about fishing, and I'd sit down, you know, and say, "Hi Hank, how you doing?" and so forth and so on, and yeah, that was it. And I read a magazine. I still like to read them, and I was minding my own business. And then I didn't know it, but there was a lady LPN there at the hospital that was the sister of Angie Borsman, or Angie Moll. And this sister told Angie, "Why don't you go to the hospital," which was about 3 or 4 miles from your home.
And the Birdie was working there.
Yeah, she was working there, and she
So
said,
I came to the hospital.
to see her, and she said, "Well, why don't you go and say hello to that guy there, because he's just laying there week after week with these burns, you know." And so I'm sitting there, just like this, and Hank is there, and here's the box of chocolates, and I enjoy that, you know, and I'm looking through that, and now, You stand up and you say it just like you said it to me. You want to? Okay. I'm minding my business, and this blonde comes in. Let me tell you, she was okay. And she says, "What are you doing? Why aren't you visiting with your friend?" She was beautiful, and I was just getting, not chewed out, but why aren't you visiting with your friend? Well, I am. Oh. Well, end of story. I went home, and I wasn't going to look her up. No, girl, I was scared of her. And so then, in a few weeks, then I said to somebody there, he was transferred to Iowa City, and that's the place. Iowa City had the hospital, and they had the facilities, and they're going to work on him. And I thought, that's good. And I said, I want to go there and visit Hank. And then he had a sister, a year older than me, and she was she was about that attractive. Anyhow, yeah, I'm going to Iowa City. I'll leave on Friday morning, and then we can stay there overnight, and then come back Saturday night. Okay. And then there was two of my classmates, they were dating, and her sister was an RN in this big hospital, and she said, boy, she heard that I was going, and she said, can't think of her name. She said, we'd like to ride along, because then I want to visit my sister there if you're going to that hospital. I said, yeah, that's fine. And then Gert Kears, the sister of my friend, said, no, I don't want to go there just with him, no. So she asked Angie, will you ride along to Iowa City with me? I don't want to be, just alone with Mary. And you said, okay. And I don't know why. But it was,
I don't want to see Hank.
yeah, she wanted to see Hank, my friend. See if there was any progress medically.
Yeah.
You bet. And so we went there, and that's okay. Everybody got to visit everybody, and time to come home. And so this is early spring, and in early spring, all these rivers in Iowa, they get fog coming out. And let me tell you, you go down in the river bottom, and it's a whiteout. And then you come up out again, a little higher on the other side, drive along, and there's, half a dozen of those spots, rivers in Iowa, maybe more. And that's, pedaling 300 miles, the way it was, and hit that fog at night, and I'm driving, and let me tell you, I was getting just about as gray as that fog. It was tough driving. There was no joke. It really wasn't. I couldn't look to the right or the left. You just had to stay on the road. There was not freeways in those days, and it was tough. And one time I glanced up in the mirror because I thought there was a car tailing me, and this girl is looking in the mirror straight at me. I got my eyes back on the road quick because, whoa! And so that's the way it went through the night. And then one time we had to take a break, and then this girl, she slipped into the middle of the front seat. Those were not bucket seats in those days. They were very comfortable, flat across. Guess who's right there? And my hands are on the wheel, and you better believe that you kept both hands on the wheel and both eyes on the road, because this is not good. And so we got back to the center, and I dropped off the couple, think in Sioux Center.
They stayed.
Oh, that's right, they stayed in Iowa City. So then it was just, two girls, myself, coming home. And she wound up there. Well, that's okay. And then, I dropped her off at the farm. But by that time I was thinking, I'd like to come back. And so I made a mental note, it's a red barn, and a white house, and a red corn crib. And that's about all I remember because I was beat. And so I went to work that week, and Saturday I came back to Sioux County, north of Sioux Center, and I found the road, and then I started looking for a red barn and a white house. And guess what the two colors are in rural Sioux County, Iowa?
Everybody has
Red barn and white houses, every blessed one of them. But, nothing happens by chance. And I turned in this one driveway, and I went to the door, and rapped on the door. You answered, right? I don't know if you saw the car coming or not, but she came to the door, she was in farm clothes, and she let out a gas. She did. I did fine. Well, anyhow, that was the beginning of it, and we drove off the yard. I mean, the first time you see this girl, you don't park underneath Mom and Dad. No, you go off separate. You're guilty of that too. They all think alike.
We drove 50 miles to get a hamburger.
Whoa, 50.
To get what?
A hamburger.
Oh.
Because I knew where things were in Sioux Falls, and I didn't know anything in between. And so that's the way it was, and we talked a bit, and then, that was the beginning of it. For one thing, in my family and my mother's family, cousins, uncles and aunts, it was just a firm, hearty handshake. That's it. That outfit, or that family, no, they gave out hugs. I've never been hugged before.
The Long families are huggers, huh?
And so, and the following week, I got a hug and a sugar cookie before I left for home. And, yeah, I was just, I was just swamped. I didn't know which way was up or where the sun was going to come up, and it saved so much time. Crazy. And we got married. I had been best man for my friend Bob, he was best man for mine. We got married, we lived on the farm for 6 months, and then I got drafted. And went to Fort Knox, Kentucky. Angie came there later, 4 months of basic training. And Jim was born there. We had our first son very quickly. And he was put to bed in a pull-out drawer on about an 18-foot camping trailer. Another couple at the base, they lived in the front part, and we were in the back part.
They lived in a house. They lived in a house.
We were alone in the trailer? Okay, but anyhow, that's where his cradle was. And in those days, everybody was going to Korea. And so I was too. You have orders for PCOM. And we came home with our car, and I said, let's drive out instead of taking the train. A couple more days together. And so some acquaintances of ours, they were just married too, they rode along with us. went to Fort Lewis, Washington, and we got there about 5 o'clock at night on the day I was supposed to arrive. And
Yes, sir.
came there, and there's about 3,000 men sitting on duffel bags on the parade ground. And I said to Andy, by that time we knew a little bit about the Army, and I said, no, we don't need to be there on those duffel bags all night. Let's turn around, go out the gate, get a hotel, we'll come back in the morning. And so we came back in the morning, and that parade ground was empty, and they had flown out for Japan, one more hop, straight into Korea, into combat.
They went by airplane?
Yeah, that whole thing went,
Oh.
they loaded them out. Well, we were there then with 40 or 50 in the morning, and no, there's no flights for that, and so there's no more big batches of troops coming in. You know, they're scheduled from all these different training grounds through the U.S. And so we were there, checked in, and then checked out. And so we spent a day or two, or one day was it, we went up to Fort Lewis, and then up to the Canadian border and went through that garden there on the border and stuff like that. Came back in, and then, no, they kind of put a little bit squeeze to stay here, and so we told the girls, you better just turn around and go home, and they did. And Jake and I stayed there, and then, first day they wanted us to do KP, and it was quietly mentioned, you know, that if you have $20, we can take your name off the KP list. So we learned very quickly how this place was run. So we saw to it that we got out of the barracks on time in the morning and sort of disappeared from Fort Lewis. And it got a little worse each day, and finally they would, the last day that, we've been there almost a month, and the last day they put one man on each corner of that barracks, and then they sent somebody in to call us out, and we were marched over to the first sergeant's office, and then they were all different barracks there in little blocks there, because they were waiting to get enough build-up, you know, for a troop ship. They were starting to come in, and then we thought, no, we don't need to stand here, and we melted away, and I looked back, and you know, you see that checkerboard, and there was one block missing in the checkerboard. We were out of there, but we were not AWOL.
You're just off around the base somewhere?
That's right, we just put
Like that
around.
comic.
But this time they were making a troop ship,
They were waiting for enough people to come in.
so they weren't gonna make another flight going out.
No,
No,
keep still, keep still.
he went on.
So that went that way, and then finally, there was enough for a troop ship, and we loaded up, and that was different. I'd never been on a boat before in my life, and there was over 2,000 of us, a lot of men on there, a lot of men. There were no women in the military then, or the Navy, nothing. And we got on there and I thought, boy, this thing is solid, you know, I don't know, 300 feet long maybe. And you went up that good canal, is that the one that leads out toward the ocean, I think. And this thing is just like a railroad locomotive. I mean, it is steady as a stone. Well, we go out up toward the Aleutians and then down into Japan, and I guess that's less nautical miles than it would be just going straight. I don't know, but we went up there and it was getting colder and colder, and then we ran into a storm, and it was a doozy because you know, being in farming and stuff like that, you can estimate height. And it was about 40 foot from trough to crest. I'm not kidding you. And when it's pointing, they go right straight into it. That's the only way you can with a big ship. And when you are headed into that wave, you raise up, and also the water goes like that. And when you're in the trough, you are headed down almost that degree. And you have a thought about, is that front end going to come up? But it always does. I did not get seasick. Very thankful for that. I stayed on top so I could see just what was happening. And believe me, I had a firm grip on something. And it was an eye-opener. And finally they said, okay, everybody inside. We're going to button this thing down. Everybody inside. And I had been told before leaving, do not drink at these water coolers. They had a water cooler on every floor, and I think I was down 6 decks. I was really down. And this old man told me already in Fort Lewis, don't drink from them coolers. Get something solid in your stomach. Just get it plugged up. You won't be bothered with seasickness. And he was right. Not everybody can handle it that way. But the other thing I remember that we had a lot of blacks on board. There was a whole bunch from down south, Bible Belt blacks, and they knew how to sing. They could sing spirituals and stuff like that. And so I always liked to hear male voices, quartets and stuff. And then on one landing, there was about 2 or 3 of them. They were singing bigger spirituals, Baptist songs, good ones, because it was scary. Just put it that way, it was scary. And another one would come along and he would hum, I don't know nothing about tune or anything, and he would fit in somewhere there. And some other one would come along and he would pitch it a little higher or a little lower, his voice. And honest, by the time the landing was full, I had maybe 8 blacks standing there. They could all sing, they were born to sing. And each one was, what do you call that, blending in with the other, harmonizing with the others. And let me tell you, that was some singing. You guys are not going to believe it. It was awesome. And the following day was Sunday, and they had a chapel, and then a half a dozen of them were singing up front during that service, so I knew what was coming. But we keep it going, and it takes about 10 days, I think. We come to Japan. We knew we were getting closer, and the water is getting calmer, and you look out at night, and here's all little phosphorescent fish flying up. They just let some color out. Don't ask me what they were or anything, but hey, this was nothing I had seen in Iowa in the Sioux River or the Little Rock River. Fly out, you know, be a red or green streak. And I knew this is a different world here. And we landed then in a place called Sasebo, way on the southern end of Japan. And it's hot and humid. You get off, and 2,000 men standing on one side of it makes the ship lean. I didn't think you could. But you put all these bodies against the rail, 8 deep, that she leans a little bit. We got off,